I still remember the moment my mother said it. Her voice soft, almost polite, like she was asking for tea. Find someone richer. We were sitting in my hotel lobby, the marble floor cold under my feet, rain tapping the glass outside. This was my wedding week. The hotel was mine, worth $12 million, built with years of quiet work and long nights. My parents were staying there as guests, smiling at the staff and praising the rooms. But that morning, they canceled the wedding funds they had promised. I nodded, because that is what I always did. Inside, something folded in on itself. I loved them. I wanted their pride. Instead, I felt small, like a child again, waiting at the kitchen table for approval that never came. The piano music in my head slowed. I realized this story was not about money. It was about belonging. Alone today. Before all of this, my life looked calm from the outside. I grew up in a family that valued success, neat clothes, and quiet dinners. Love was there, but it was measured. My parents believed safety came from money and respect came from status. I learned early to stay grateful and silent. I worked hard, studied harder, and carried their expectations like a folded coat on my arm. The hotel came years later. I built it slowly, room by room, choice by choice. I remember the first opening day, the smell of fresh paint, the echo in the halls. I called my father that night. He said, "That's good," and then asked how much it was worth. I told myself that was enough. When I met the person I chose to marry, it felt simple. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. We cooked together in small kitchens. We talked about mornings, not mansions. My parents were polite when I told them. My mother smiled and said, "We'll help with the wedding." I felt relief, like a door opening. Before the wedding week, they arrived at my hotel with suitcases and compliments. They praised the view, the staff, and the sheets. At night, I lay awake listening to the soft hum of the building and rain against the windows. I believed this was a bridge. I believed family and love could finally sit at the same table. I did not know how fragile that hope was, or how easily silence could break then. The days before the wedding moved slowly, like the air was thick. Every morning I met my parents at breakfast in the hotel dining room. The table was wide and quiet. Silverware clicked softly. My mother talked about flowers. My father talked about guests and seating. No one asked how I felt. I told myself that was normal. In the afternoons, I walked through the hotel alone. I touched the walls, checked the lights, and listened to the calm voices of guests passing by. This place carried my effort, my risk, and my belief in myself. It felt steady, like it could hold me. I wished my parents could see it the way I did, not as a number, but as a home I built from nothing. My partner noticed my silence. One evening, while folding invitations, they asked, "Are you okay?" I paused. I wanted to say everything. Instead, I said, "I think so." They nodded and held my hand. That simple touch felt like rest. At night, rain returned, tapping the windows again. I watched my parents' room lights turn off down the hall. I wondered if they were proud, or if they were still waiting for something more. I told myself not to worry. I told myself love did not need approval. Still, a small fear stayed with me, quiet but present, like a letter unopened on the table. The tension did not arrive all at once. It came in small moments I tried to ignore. My mother began asking careful questions, the kind that sound kind but feel sharp. She asked about my partner's family, their work, and their future plans. I answered calmly, even when my chest felt tight. I told myself she was only trying to understand. One afternoon, we sat together in the hotel lounge. Soft music played. Outside, rain washed the street clean. My father looked around and said, "You've done well here." I waited for more. He paused, then added, "But weddings are expensive." His eyes stayed on his cup. I nodded, pretending I did not hear the distance in his voice. Later that day, my mother walked with me through the hallway. She touched the walls and admired the art. Then she said quietly, "You know, marriage is not just about love." I asked, "What is it about then?" She smiled but did not answer. Her silence followed me the rest of the day. At dinner, my partner tried to make conversation. "We're excited to host everyone here," they said. My father smiled politely. "It is generous," he replied. The word generous hung between us, heavy and unclear. I felt like I was offering proof of my worth, and it was still being measured. That night, I lay awake in my room. The hotel was quiet, almost breathing with me. I thought about my parents' promises to help with the wedding, spoken months ago with ease. I wondered why those words now felt fragile. I told myself not to question it. I told myself peace was better than conflict. Still, something inside me was shifting, slow and uneasy, like a door beginning to close. I did not speak about it. I smiled in meetings, approved menus, and confirmed flowers. Each choice felt heavier than it should. I sensed a test I did not understand, and for the first time, I feared failing it. The silence grew longer, and my confidence grew smaller with every quiet moment inside me. The next morning, my mother asked if we could talk. Her voice was gentle, but my stomach tightened. We sat in the small sitting area near the windows. The curtains were half closed. The room felt smaller than it should have. My mother spoke first. "We've made a decision," she said. Her voice did not shake. My father looked at me and said, "We won't be paying for the wedding." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. I waited for him to explain, to soften it. He did not. My mother added, "It's for your own good." I asked, quietly, "Why now?" She sighed and said, "Because this path limits you." I felt my chest tighten. I reminded them this hotel was mine. I reminded them I was not asking for rescue. My father shook his head. "It's not about what you have," he said. "It's about who you choose." Then my mother said the words that stayed with me. "Find someone richer." She said it like advice, like love could be upgraded. I did not cry. I sat very still. I nodded once. Years of training told me not to react. Inside, something cracked, but it made no sound. I stood up and said, "Okay." That was all. They seemed relieved. I walked out into the hallway. The carpet felt soft under my feet. The staff passed by and smiled. I returned their smiles without thinking. In my room, I closed the door and leaned against it. The silence pressed in. I thought about every moment I tried to earn their pride, every time I believed it was close. That evening, I told my partner. I expected anger. Instead, they listened quietly. Then they said, "I'm sorry you had to hear that." No defense, no blame, just care. I realized then how different love could feel. As night fell, rain returned again. I watched it from the window, falling steadily. The wedding plans continued around me, but something had already changed. The conflict was no longer between us, it was inside me. And I knew there was no going back to who I was before those words were spoken. The morning after that conversation, I woke up before sunrise. The hotel was still, like it was holding its breath. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the quiet. For the first time in years, I did not reach for my phone. I did not check messages or plans. I just sat there, feeling the weight of what had happened. I went down to the kitchen early. The lights were low. One of the staff nodded at me and said, "Good morning." I said it back, my voice steady. Inside, I felt hollow. I made myself a cup of tea and sat alone at a small table. Steam rose slowly. I thought about my parents sweeping a few floors above me, comfortable in the rooms I had built. I asked myself a question I had avoided for a long time. If they never changed, could I still be whole? Later that morning, my mother knocked on my door. She smiled like nothing had happened. "We should talk about the guest list," she said. I looked at her and realized how tired I was. Not angry, just tired. I told her, "Not right now." She seemed surprised. I had never said that before. When she left, my hands shook slightly. I sat back down and breathed until it passed. That small moment felt bigger than it should have. It felt like standing up for the first time after sitting too long. My partner joined me later. We sat on the bed, close but quiet. I told them I don't want their money. Saying it out loud felt strange and freeing. They nodded and said, "We'll do this our way." I believed them. In the afternoon, I walked through the hotel again, but this time I saw it differently. I saw not proof, but effort, risk, choice. I realized I had already built something strong, without permission. As evening came, I felt a calm settle in. The pain was still there, but it no longer owned me. Something had shifted. I did not know what the future would look like, but I knew one thing clearly. I could not keep shrinking to make others comfortable. That version of me had reached its end, quietly but firmly. That afternoon, my parents asked to see me again. We met in a quiet sitting room, the same one as before. The chairs were arranged neatly, like a planned conversation. I sat across from them and noticed how calm I felt. Not cold, just clear. My father spoke first. "We hope you've thought about what we said." I looked at him and replied, "I have." My mother leaned forward. "And?" she asked. I took a breath and said, "I won't change who I'm marrying." My voice did not shake. That surprised me. They exchanged a look. My mother said, "You're being emotional." I shook my head. "I'm being honest," I said. The words felt solid. My father frowned slightly. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I answered, "It was already hard." There was a long pause. The room felt still. I realized they were waiting for me to bend, like I always did. When I didn't, something shifted in them too. My mother sighed. "Then we can't support this wedding," she said. I nodded. "I understand," I replied. And I did. When I stood up to leave, my legs felt steady. I walked back into the hallway and felt a strange sense of relief. The decision had been made, not by them, by me. Later, I sat with my partner in the hotel courtyard. The air was cool. Lights reflected on wet stone. I told them everything. They listened without interrupting. When I finished, they said, "I choose you," even without their blessing. Tears filled my eyes, but they did not fall. That night, we made simple plans, smaller, quieter, ours. We crossed out things we did not need. Each line felt like letting go, not of dreams, but of pressure. As I lay in bed, I thought about the future. It felt uncertain, but real. For the first time, I was not performing. I was living. And even though my heart still hurt, it felt lighter. I realized choosing myself did not mean losing everything. It meant finally keeping something important. The final shift came quietly, not with an argument, but with distance. My parents stopped asking questions. They kept their days busy, their words careful. We moved around each other like guests in the same house. Polite, distant. I felt the loss, but I also felt something new. Space. On the morning of the rehearsal, I stood alone in the main hall. Chairs were being set up. Light poured in through tall windows. I imagined my younger self there, trying to impress, trying to earn love. I felt a soft sadness for that version of me. They did their best. My mother approached me later near the elevator. She said, "You're really going through with this?" It was not a question. I looked at her and said, "Yes." She nodded slowly. "I hope you know what you're giving up." I replied, "I know what I'm choosing." She did not respond. When I returned to my room, my partner was waiting. We sat together in silence. Outside, rain began again, light and steady. I realized I was no longer waiting for approval. I was no longer afraid of disappointment. The hardest part had already passed. The turning point was not dramatic. It was a quiet acceptance. I had chosen love without conditions. I had chosen a life that felt honest, even if it cost me comfort. The pain was still there, but it was clean. It did not confuse me anymore. As I turned off the light, I felt a calm settle in my chest. Tomorrow will be different. Not easy, but truer. And for the first time, that felt enough. The days after the decision felt slow and quiet. The wedding moved forward in a simpler shape. Fewer flowers, fewer guests, less noise. I expected to feel embarrassed or afraid. Instead, I felt steady. Each small choice we made together felt intentional, like placing stones carefully in a path. My parents remained at the hotel, but we spoke less. When we did, our words stayed safe and surface level. Weather, schedules, nothing that could hurt. I missed them in a strange way, even though they were close. The distance was not physical, it was emotional, and it felt heavier. One afternoon, I watched them check out brochures in the lobby, planning their next stop. They looked comfortable and relaxed. I wondered if they felt relieved. I wondered if they noticed the cost of their words. I realized they might never see it the way I did. My partner stayed close. We shared quiet meals, late walks through empty halls, and soft conversations before sleep. One night they said, "I'm proud of you." The words caught me off guard. I had chased that sentence my whole life. Hearing it now from someone who asked nothing in return made my chest ache. I began to notice small things again. The way morning light filled the hotel corridors, the sound of rain on stone, the comfort of routine. Life did not end because my parents withdrew support. It continued, gently. I wrote my parents a letter I never sent. In it, I thanked them for what they gave me. I also told them how deeply they hurt me. Writing it helped me breathe. I did not need them to read it for it to matter. As the wedding day grew closer, I felt something settle inside me. Grief, yes, but also relief. I was no longer negotiating my worth. I was living it. And that quiet shift began to heal places I did not know were wounded. The wedding day, my partner and I built small routines together. Morning coffee, evening walks, shared silences that felt safe. The absence of my parents' approval no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a scar. There, but no longer bleeding. One afternoon, I stood alone in the hotel lobby and watched guests come and go. I realized how many lives passed through this place, each carrying their own stories, their own quiet battles. I felt less alone. I thought often about that sentence my mother said, "Find someone richer." It had once echoed painfully in my mind. Now it sounded distant. I understood it came from fear, not cruelty. That did not excuse it, but it softened it. I never received an apology. I stopped waiting for one. Forgiveness, I learned, is not a gift you give someone else. It is something you give yourself so you can rest. One evening, my partner asked, "Do you regret it?" I thought for a moment and said, "No." And I meant it. I had lost comfort, but I gained clarity. I had chosen love that did not ask me to prove my value. As time passed, I felt gratitude return, not for the pain, but for the strength it revealed. I learned that family can disappoint you and still matter, that love can exist without agreement. That does not need witnessers. Standing at the window one night, watching rain fall softly, I felt calm. Life was not perfect, but it was honest, and that honesty felt like home. When I look back now, the memories feel softer, like they have been rounded by time. The pain is still there, but it no longer speaks first. I can see my parents clearly, without the need to defend or blame them. I see their fears, their limits, and the way they learn to love through control and caution. Understanding that did not erase the hurt, but it helped me carry it with less weight. I also see myself more clearly. The person who tried so hard to earn approval, the one who believed love had conditions. I feel compassion for that version of me. They did not fail, they simply grew. The hotel still stands, steady and bright. Guests still walk its halls, unaware of the choices made within its walls. To them, it is just a place to stay. To me, it is a reminder that I can build something meaningful without permission. My marriage is not perfect, but it is honest. We talk, we listen, we choose each other every day. That choice feels richer than anything money could offer. Sometimes I still wish my parents had chosen differently. I wish they had stayed fully, not halfway. But I no longer shape my life around that wish. I have learned that longing does not have to lead. As I move forward, I carry this truth with me. Love that asks you to shrink is not love meant to keep. And choosing yourself, even quietly, can change everything. Today, when I sit in silence, I feel something I did not feel before. Peace. Not the kind that comes from everything going right, but the kind that comes from knowing where you stand. I no longer measure my life by someone else's approval. I measure it by how it feels to wake up each morning and breathe freely. My parents are still part of my story. They always will be. I honor what they gave me, even as I accept what they could not. There is space now for both truth and care. That balance took time to learn. If there is one thing this journey taught me, it is this. Wealth can build buildings, but it cannot build belonging. Status can open doors, but it cannot hold you when you are afraid. Love, real love, is quiet. It stays. It does not ask you to be smaller. When I think of that moment in the hotel, the words that once cut so deeply no longer define me. They are part of the past, not the future. I chose a life rooted in respect, patience, and honesty. And if someone listening to this story is standing at a similar crossroads, I hope they hear this. You are allowed to choose love that feels safe. You are allowed to walk away from expectations that hurt. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose a life that feels true to you. That choice, made softly, can become your strongest foundation. If this story touched something in you, take a quiet moment with it. You're not alone in choosing love, truth, or yourself. If you've ever had to walk a hard path for your own peace, we see you. You can support this channel by liking this video, sharing it with someone who may need to hear it, or leaving a comment about what part stayed with you. Your story matters too. And if you want more gentle, real-life stories like this, stories about family, love, and finding your own strength, subscribe and stay with us. We'll be here, one quiet story at a time.